morning, student. I am Dr. Ritika, the faculty of CSC department. As an associate professor in St. Andrews Institute of Technology and Management, today I am going to deliver the lecture on the subject of our software engineering, which is related to our BCA 4th SAM. And today we will cover the topic of our software testing. So, we will cover the topic of software testing. Now, software testing. Now, what is testing? Software testing or testing, when done correctly, can increase overall software quality of the conformance by testing that the product conforms to its requirement. So, testing begins with the software engineers in early stages, but later specialists may be involved in the testing process. After generating source code, the software must be tested to uncover and correct as many errors as possible before delivering it to the customer. It is important to test software because a customer, after running it many times, would finally uncover an error. Software testing fundamentals. During software engineering activities, an engineer attempts to build software where, as during testing activities, the intent is to demolish the software. Hence, testing is psychologically destructive rather than constructive. A good and successful test is one that uncovers an undiscovered errors. All the tests that are carried out should be traceable to customer requirement at the sometimes exhaustive testing is not possible. Testing objectives. Testing is a process of executing a program with the intent of finding an error. A good test case is one that has a high probability of finding an as yet undiscovered error. A successful test is one that uncovers as an as yet undiscovered error. Now, common terms we will use in our software testing are errors, faults, bugs, and failures. So, we have covered in our previous slides about all these common terms. Now, once again, just I am going to repeat about all of them. Like, first is error. So, difference between the actual output of a software and the correct output. Fault is a condition that causes a system to fail in performing its required function. Bug. A bug is an application error in software does not affect the whole applications in term of running. So it does not stop the execution of applications. It produces wrong output. Failure occurs when a fault is executed. The inability of a system or component to perform its required functions within specified performance requirements. Testing principles. All tests should be traceable to customer's requirement. For a customer, the most served defects are the one that cause the program to fail to meet the requirements. Tests should be planned long before testing begins. All tests can be planned and designed before any code has been generated. So, testing should begin in the small and progress towards testing in the large. The first test planned and executed generally, which focused on individual components. Next other principle are a testing progress focus shifts on integrated clusters of component and then the entire system. So exhaustive testing is not possible to test exhaustively. Even a small program could take years. To be more effective, testing should be conducted by an independent third party. So software engineer who constricts the software is not always the best person to test it. So, a third party deems to be more efficient. The software testing. Here are the two major type of software are black box testing and white box testing. Now white box testing is called to be the glass box testing. So in black box testing it focuses on input, output and principles functions of a software module. But in glass box testing it looks into the structural testing or glass box testing. Statements, paths, and branches are checked for correct execution. In white box testing, it focuses thoroughness or you can say coverage where every statement in the component is executed at least once. White box testing is also known as structural testing or you can say code testing. The major objective of white box testing is to focus in internal program structure and discover all internal program errors. So with the help of this diagram, you know inputs. So white boxing which is based on our structural testing and code based testing and they give you an output. So it is about the white box testing. Now, advantages of white box testing. It helps optimizing the code. It helps removing extra line of code where all possible code pathways can be tested, which include error handling, resource dependencies, and additional internal code logic and flow. Now next, it enables testers to find programming errors quickly. Next, a good quality of coding work and coding standards to be used. Now disadvantages of white box testing. Knowledge of code and internal structure is a prerequisite. A skilled tester is needed to carry out this type of test, which increase the cost. Impossible to look into every bit of code to find out hidden errors. Very expensive technique. Also requires knowledge to target system, testing tools and coding language. Requires specialized tool such as resource code, analyzer, debugger and fault injectors. Some traditional white box testing which are further divided into two types that are basic path testing which includes flow graph, cyclomatic complexity and graph matrix. And second is the control structure which include condition testing, data flow testing and loop testing. Now, basic path testing. It is a white box testing technique that enables the designers to derive a logical complexity measures of a procedural design. The test cases based on basic path testing guarantee to execute every statement in program at least once. Control structure testing. Although the basic path testing is simple and highly effective, it is not sufficient in itself. Other variations on control structure improves quality of white box testing. Control structure testing which controls over the order in which the instructions in program are executed. One of the major objectives of control structure testing includes the selection of the test cases to meet various criteria for coverage the code. So the test cases are derived to exercise control over the order of the execution of the code. In coverage based testing, it works by choosing test cases according to well defined coverage criteria. The more common coverage criteria are given as statement coverage, or node coverage, where every statement of the program should be exercised at least once. Branch coverage or decision coverage, where every possible alternative in a branch of the program should be exercised at least once. Condition coverage, where each condition in a branch is made to evaluate to true and false at least once. Next is decision and condition coverage, where each condition in a branch is made to evaluate to both true and false, and each branch is made to evaluate to both true and false. Conditional testing. In this kind of testing, various test cases are designed so that the logical condition contained in a program can be exercised. A simple condition can be defined as a single Boolean variables or a relational expressions. The condition testing method tries to focus on testing where each and every condition which is existing in a program and gives a path to execute. Some advantages related to our condition testing is measurement of test coverage of a condition is simple. The test coverage of condition in a program makes guidance for the generation of extra test for the program. Data flow testing. Testing in which test cases are designed which is based on variable uses within the code. It looks at the life cycle of a particular variable where it may follow two major types of usage mode, which is P use and C use, where in P use, which is known as predictive use, and C use is the computational use. Now next is the loop testing. So four different classes of loop testing are simple loop, nested loop, concatenated loop, and unstructured loop. So with the help of this diagram you can understand simple loop, a loop within loop, concatenated loop which is the related to each other, and unstructured means which is not in a structural form. These four diagrams show the different classes of loops. In black box testing is called to be the behavior testing. Its focus on the functional requirements of the software, that is, it enables the software engineer to derive sets of input conditions that will fully exercise all functional requirements for a program, where this testing is not an alternative to white box technique, rather it is complementary approach that is likely to uncover a different classes of errors than white box methods. So white box testing attempts to find errors in the following criteria like incorrect or missing functions, interface errors, errors in data structures or external database access, behavior or performance errors, and last is the initialization and termination errors. Here are the some stages of our black box testing are equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, and last is the robustness testing. Some advantages of black box testing are more effective on large units of code than glass box testing. So testers need no knowledge to implement, which includes some specific programming language. So testers and the programmers are independent to each other, where the tests are done from a user's point of view, will help to expose any ambiguities or inconsistencies in the specification. These test cases can be designed as soon as the specification is complete. Some disadvantages like a small number of possible inputs can actually be tested to test every possible input stream would take nearly forever. Without clear and concise specification, test cases are hard to design. There may be unnecessary repetition of test inputs if the tester is not informed of the test cases the programmer has already tired. Next is the robustness testing. It means it is capable of a software to keep all the acceptable behavior. This acceptability is a standard known as robustness requirement, and they compromises the appreciation which handles the following: invalid IP given by the user or any other interfacing applications, some hardware component failures, some software component failures, and external system failures. Next is the static testing. Static testing is carried out without execution of a program. At different levels, static testing may be exposed the fault programming construct, which allows to make it sure that variable use prior to initialized, declared but not used. They assign two times but not at all used between assignments, which includes undeclared variable, interface fault or not, and may also include some parameter type and number mismatch and uncalled functions as well as procedures. Now, stages of our static testing. First is control flow analysis. Checking is done on loops which are with either multiple or exist point. Second, data use analysis. The checking is done regarding uninitialized variables, variables assigned more than once, variables are declared but not at all used. Interface analysis, where checking consistency of procedures as well as their use. Fourth, information analysis. The checking is done regarding dependencies of output variables and also information for code interceptions or reviews. And now next is the path analysis. They check the path through the program as well as set out the statement executed in that particular path. Now some principles of static testing are: review each and every coding standards violation, review complexity of code, inspect and remove unreachable code, unreferenced procedure and unused variable, report each and every type of data flow anomalies, which includes before initialization. First, a value is assigned to a variable and then without being used run out of scope. Now value is assigned to a variable and again reassigned without making use in between, or some parameter may be mismatched and some suspicious costs. Object oriented testing strategies. So in this strategy of test for testing, computer software begins with testing in the small and works outward toward testing in the large. So we begin with unit test, then progress towards integration testing and cumulate with functional and system testing. So in unit testing, it focuses on the small compilable program unit, the subprograms, or you can say in subprogram they include some subroutine module procedures. Once each of these units have been testing individually, it is integrated into a program structure while a series of regression testing are run to uncover errors due to interface between the modules and side effect caused by the addition of new units. Finally, the whole system is tested, which ensure that error is required are uncovered. Now testing methods are fault-based testing, class testing and the class hierarchy, and scenario-based testing design. In fault-based testing, the tester look for the possible fault or to determine whether these faults exist. Test cases are designed to exercise the design or code. Class test and the class hierarchy, it in inheritance does not obviate the need for thorough testing of all derived classes. In fact, it can actually complicate the testing processes. In scenario based testing design, they concentrate on what the user does, not what the product does. Means they can capture the task that the user had to perform, then apply them and their variant as tests. Now, test method applicable at the class level like random testing to identify their operation applicable to a class, define constraint on their use, identify minimum test sequence. So, they generate a variety of random test sequences, exercise other class instance like histories. Testing methods applicable at the class level. In partition testing, it reduced the number of test cases required to test a class in much the same way as equivalence partition for conventional software. They include state-based partitioning, attribute partitioning, and last is the category-based partitioning. Now, state-based partitioning, which are categorize and test operations on their ability to change the state of a class, which include account account class, state operation, deposit, withdraw, where known state operation includes balance, summarize, and credit limited. So they are designed in a way that exercise operations that change state and those that do not change states. So attribute based partitioning is categorized and test operation which is based on the attributes that they use. So they are account class, attribute balance and credit limited can be used to define that partitioning. They may be further divided into three parts like operation that use credit limit, operation that modify credit limits, and operation that do not use or modify credit limits. In category based, it is based on the generic functions of each performs. Like we can say the initialize operation where open and setup, computational operation like deposit and withdraw, some query like operations balance, summarize, credit limits, and terminations operation like close. So these are the categories based partitioning. Now, planning software testing is the process for the project which consists of high level of tasks like test planning, test case design, and test execution. In general, in a project, test commences with a test plan and terminates with successful execution of an acceptance testing. Now, test plans is a journal document for the entire project which define the scope, approach to be taken and schedule of testing as well as identifies the test items for testing and some personnel responsible for the different activities of testing. So it can be done well before the actual testing commences and can be done in parallel with the coding and design activities. They may contain some project plan, some requirement document, and you can say some architecture or design document. Some test plan specification like a test unit specification, features to be tested, approaches for testing, test deliverable, and schedule and task allocations. Now in test execution, it focused on the execution part of our testing, which may be or we can say which includes some Test case specification only specify the set of tests for the unit to be tested and also requires a module to set up the environment as started in the test plan and test case specifications. Now test case execution analysis, defects, logging and tracking. So these are the defects and then fixed and testing is done to verify them. So the reporting and tracking of defects found during testing where they they are often logged. After logging a particular, they are very important in a large software project which have been hundreds or thousands of defects that are found by different people at different stages of the project. So any person who fix a defect is not the person who finds or reports the defects. But in logging and tracking, they consider one of the best practice for managing a project and follow the most software organizations. Here are the some life cycles of the defects. Like if defect is found, the logging in the defect control system and along with some sufficient information about the defect. Then they are submitted the defect. After submitting, the job is fixed. The defects is assigned to some persons who are generally the author of the document or code in which the defect is found. If the defect then enter the fixed statement, a defect that is fixed is still not considered as fully done. So successfully fixing of the defect is verified. Once the defect is verified, the defect can be marked as a closed. So here is the diagram. Enter by the submitter submitted, fixed by the owner it fixed it, and checked by the submitter it submitted and close all the defects. So it is all about the life cycle of a defect. Now references are given like software testing concept and practices like NARSO and software engineering practitioner. These are the books by which we have followed these slides. We have followed to prepare these slides. So students, it is all about our software testing. So students, thank you for your kind attention. Thank you students. Have a nice day.